If a creator was to pass unexpectedly, like what happens to their content, like their fan accounts or subscription payouts from OnlyFans, their earnings, if they have no legal plan?
Welcome back to On the Horizon. This is Melrose Michaels. I am your host, and I'm here to share what's worked for me in building my adult creator business to try to make building yours just a little bit easier. Let's get into today's episode.
If you're an adult creator making money online, but you have no idea how to protect it, grow it, or retire with it, this conversation is the one that you didn't know you needed. Today, we're going to be joined by Nate Mallory, an attorney, financial therapist, and the founder of Only Tax Deductions law firm, who's made it his mission to help adult creators like you and me keep more of what we earn to build long-term wealth. Nate isn't just a tax guy. He holds 2 Masters of Laws degrees in wealth management and taxation, and he works exclusively with adult industry professionals. Whether you're wondering what to do instead of a 401k or how to plan for retirement, or how to protect your income and content for the long haul, Nate has the answers. So stick around because by the end of this episode, you should have a clearer path to financial stability, legal protection, and a future that you can actually want to live in. So first off, Nate, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you here today. I would love if we could kick some things off with like a little bit of background to get us started so that you can introduce yourself to everyone who's here and kind of tell us how you found your way to this Twitter space, how you got into adult.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So for those that don't know me, my name is Nate Mallory. I'm the owner and founder of Only Tax Deductions law firm. We're a tax law firm that specializes in helping content creators and business owners in the industry. I got my law degree from Texas A&M University and did a master's law in wealth management and a second master's law in taxation. Got my license as a certified financial therapist and accredited financial counselor, as well as a mediator. My approach to starting this company was I saw that there was a big lack of professional services in the industry and just a lack of proper education for people of what to do with their business and how taxes work, and particularly in managing finances and knowing how to plan for retirement. One of the unique things about the adult industry is how entrepreneurial it is in nature. By that same time, it leaves a lot of people missing guidance of what to do with their money and what to do with planning for their future. So a big part of my company is taking a holistic approach on not just the most logical way for people to grow their money, but taking in biases and feelings and fears that we might have associated with money and investments, and be able to help people get to whatever their goals might be, whether it's retiring at a certain age or having a certain lifestyle that they want to have. So that's been the approach that we've taken with the company, and we've been able to help a lot of people so far with that.
Yeah, I love this because it's something I've been pretty open about with our community and like with our audience, but I found myself in a huge tax mess early on in my career, still undoing it, actually, still kind of unfucking that situation. But the reality of like a lot of creators coming into this business, they don't realize the repercussions for being, a 1099 independent contractor, or they don't know what they should be saving or how they should be preparing. And we've talked a lot about those like kind of beginner intro topics at length, but what I think makes you and what your business does kind of uniquely is that you're kind of multiple resources in one place. And the part about financial strategy and long-term planning, that is a piece that I don't think gets enough attention, or that we have like really expanded on a whole bunch. So I'm curious in terms of financial long-term planning, like what things do you think creators should really be thinking about for their long-term wealth? Like what is the piece they're not considering?
There's kind of 2 big pieces to it. One is the fact that for the most part, everyone in the industry that does content creation is self-employed. Whether you own an LLC or a corporation with your business, or you're sole proprietor, for the most part, most content creators are on their own as far as setting their own money aside for retirement. They don't have a pension. There's not a 401k where they just put money away and assume they'll be okay in retirement. And that makes it difficult, just having that unknown. And kind of the second big, I guess, problem or uniqueness with the industry is how long a content creator will be working in the industry is also a bit of an unknown. I usually equate working in the industry a bit more similar to being a professional athlete than being a traditional W-2 employee. The lucrativeness of the industry and the amount of money that creators can make can be fantastic and much greater than other career choices. But at the same time, they might not be able to work for as long as possible, whether it's changing trends in the industry or platform. Take a look at, OnlyFans, for example. Until COVID in 2020, that really was not this lucrative career path that it is now. And 5 years later, it's continued to grow more and more. But as trends in the industry change, or as laws in different countries change, it's unknown how long that revenue source will be as strong as it is. And so it's really important for content creators to have a long-term vision of not just their career, but their life, of where do they want to be and how long do they want to be in the industry, and realistically, how long can they keep making the kind of money that they make now going forward. And so that really comes into play of making sure to put enough money away into retirement to have the life you want when that money might not be coming in the same way it does right now.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the pieces of advice that is commonly circulating around creators is, saving your 20% or 30% for taxes. But what should creators be saving for long-term financial wealth? Is there a percentage? Is there a strategy? Should they be considering 401ks or Roth IRAs or mutual funds? What is the thing that creators should be exploring now while they are making that kind of athlete level money?
Sure. And I wish there was kind of a magical number, and just give a percentage and that'll be enough. You put that away every month for 10 years and you'll have enough for retirement. But the problem is, everyone's a unique individual, and they have different tastes in life and different goals and aspirations. And so everyone has to kind of plan individually towards how much money they need. There's some rule of thumbs that can kind of help steer people in the right direction. One of them is having 25 times your expenses. So if your rent or mortgage, your eating out allowance, your vacations, everything that you spend money on in a year is $100,000. A general rule of thumb is to have enough money to retire to maintain that lifestyle, you need 25 times that. And the other way to look at that is you have what's called a safe withdrawal rate of 4%. What that is when you have your retirement investment, $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is, you can withdraw from that 4% a year. And it's called a safe withdrawal rate because with your investments growing, gaining interest on it, and counteracting inflation, you'll have enough money to live off of that through retirement. And there's all sorts of calculators online that can be used to help really project this. And when we sit down and really plan for someone's financial future, we give them all sorts of projections and charts to really narrow down that number. But that's a good rule of thumb. But everyone's different. What might be a great lifestyle for one person is living in their cabin in Oklahoma with their dogs, and they only need $20,000 a year to live on. And for other people, they want to travel and see the world, and want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on just vacations alone. So everyone really has to kind of take a unique look at their own life that they're currently living, and also the one they want to have in the future, and make sure that they have enough to live that lifestyle.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. When someone comes into your law firm or comes seeking services from you, what does that process look like? What is the first thing you guys do? Do you kind of dig into their books or ask about their lifestyle and their expenses or their goals? What is coming to the only deductions? What does that process play out like?
Yeah. So, the first thing I always like to do is to get to know the client more, what specifically they do with their business, what's their financial situation look like, So that's looking at, what kind of assets do they have, checking accounts, savings accounts, investments, properties, looking at what kind of debts they have, car loans, mortgage, student loans, credit cards, debt is something that people often forget about. All these things play a major role in someone's overall financial plan. But a big part of what we do is not just look at the analytics and the actual financial numbers, but look at a more holistic approach to it. It's, if someone's making a lot of money in the industry, but they just feel like they're constantly living month to month and don't have money saved. I can tell someone, stop spending and set money aside, but that's not going to change a habit. What actually changes the habit is finding out what's the core reason that you have that kind of relationship with money. Is it a fear that you're never going to have enough? Is it you grew up in a household that, financial planning was just never a conversation? Do you have a fear of making a mistake with your money that you think you can't fix? And once I really find, with a client, what's their relationship with finances, I then look at what's their goal. Where do you see yourself next year, in 5 years, in 15 years? And once I'm able to help a client really figure out what their goals are, both financially and just with what they want to do with their life, then we can make a plan to get them there. So it's really important to know where someone is starting at right now and where they want to be in order to make a path to get there.
If you're enjoying this podcast episode so far, please take one moment to share it with another one of your adult content creator friends, because you know what the rule is here. We do not gatekeep, and we want to make as many adult creators' businesses as easy as possible. And you sharing this episode with them might do exactly that. Thanks so much in advance.
Yeah, I'm all about reverse engineering your goals. So that makes perfect sense to me, the way that would play out. Right now, as of recording this episode with you, it's April 1st. So we have a huge tax deadline coming up. So I'm wondering for the creators, what should they be thinking about or double checking or kind of getting in order before filing this year?
Yeah. So, for those that might not know off the top of their head, April 15th is the big tax deadline that's coming up. Those that have an S corporation was March 15th. Things to prepare for it. I usually give clients a list of documents that they want to put together. It's, any 1099s that they've received. These are common getting from production studios or content platforms, whether someone has W-2s, property tax statements if they own a home, mortgage interest statements, because those can be deducted from your taxes. But the probably single most important document for creators to have is something called a profit and loss report, or it's often called a P&L report. This essentially shows how much money they've made from their business in the year. And probably more importantly, and the part people care about the most is what can they deduct? What expenses do they have? And the P&L report breaks that down into categories. Things like office supplies, subscriptions, travel is usually always a big one for clients, whether they do traveling modeling or going to conferences and expos. The P&L report is what's needed in order to do your tax return correctly to really maximize a lot of these deductions. But, those are all documents that, start coming in January, February. January 31st is when 1099s are supposed to go out. And all of that put together is whether you're doing your taxes yourself or have a tax professional help you. Those are all things that you're going to want to have with you when you start doing your tax return.
Okay. And so for some of the creators who might listen to this when it airs as a proper podcast episode, which will be, weeks or so, they're going to be closer to that deadline. What are the last minute options or things creators should know about should they be running late for this deadline? Because I know some of us will. I've been there myself many times. So what piece of advice or extension filing should they be considering?
Sure. Yeah. So first and foremost, anyone can file an extension, whether you're a business owner or you're a regular W-2 employee. You need to file the extension still before the April 15th deadline to prevent any penalties. But with the extension, it extends the deadline out to October 15th. So it does give you a lot of time, but you also don't want to wait all the way till then, because if you do owe taxes during that time, that is going to accrue interest along the way. So just because you have an extension, that can prevent penalties, but it doesn't prevent interest on the taxes that you already owe. The other thing too is you can always go back and amend a tax return. So if you're waiting to do your taxes because there's a 1099 that hasn't come in from one of the content websites yet, or from an employer you had, and that's the last thing you're waiting on, my recommendation would be go ahead and file your tax return. You can always go back and amend it, whether you do it yourself through TurboTax or you use a big company like H&R Block, or use someone like our firm where we specialize in the industry doing tax returns and other deductions. You're still able to do the extension and do the amendment, whether it's yourself or a professional doing it for you.
Okay, and this is like a bit of a side quest question, but aside from taxes, when creators are, you know, incorporating or like becoming businesses, because there's, the segment of our audience who are probably newer creators who aren't incorporated in any way, not even an LLC. And then there's the rest of our audience who maybe is an LLC, or maybe they have an S Corp or C Corp, depending on what kind of business they're running. But when you have a creator forming an entity, which points should they be considering pivoting to other kind of corporations? Because this is one I get asked a lot about in DMs, and I've actually taken on different corporate structures personally as a creator throughout my career. So like, what is kind of the stepping stones of when to pivot your corp, or when to even get incorporated to begin with?
Yeah, so it always comes down to a little bit of individual basis. Probably the most common one I always get asked about is the LLC. And that probably is the most common entity that creators form. So when you don't have an entity at all, LLC, partnership, corporation, what your default status is called a sole proprietor. And that's no different than if you opened a lemonade stand today or started an Etsy shop. Sole proprietor is someone that's self-employed. They own a business, but they haven't formed a legal entity for it. The benefit you get from forming an entity, and each one's got some different requirements and some different benefits, whether they're from a tax standpoint or a legal standpoint. But generally, all of them have kind of two big benefits. One is it adds legitimacy, whether that's legitimacy to clients or vendors that they see that you're a formed entity. But it also forms legitimacy with the IRS. When you do tax deductions with a business, especially when you're new and starting out and your business isn't making a lot of money, everyone always wants to write off as much as they can. And sometimes when you start off, you actually have more expenses than you do income. And the IRS will sometimes try to disallow deductions using something called the hobby loss rule, where they try to say that your business is a hobby and it's not actually a business that's in the operation of making a profit. So having things like a business entity, separate bank accounts, keeping good bookkeeping records, these are all things that are used in a multi-factor test for the hobby loss rule to prove that your business is legitimate and that you're able to do those write-offs. The second big benefit that comes from making an entity is having liability protection. When you form a legal entity, whether it's LLC or corporation, you have certain legal protections. Now, there might not be a whole lot of lawsuits that happen against content creators, depending on what exactly kind of work you do. But it's always nice to be able to sleep better at night knowing that if something went wrong with my business and someone sued me or came after me, my house isn't at risk, my car's not at risk, my retirement accounts aren't at risk. And so having an entity gives a little bit of, or it can give a lot of protection to a content creator as well. So that way they are protected from, certain legal suits and things of that nature.
Okay, perfect. And this is really interesting because even what you mentioned in passing with it's not very common for creators to get sued or for lawsuits to happen. There's those outlier circumstances, something that's very all over the news or the influencer creator ecosystem right now is Amaranth recently, who's a huge Twitch streamer and OnlyFans creator, had her house broken into and, was held at gunpoint and all of this stuff happened. And someone in our household actually shot one of the intruders. So when things like that happen, there is liabilities you can take on, or the families can actually sue you, even though you are the victim of a circumstance like that. So when you don't have those protections of corporations and things in place, you are risking a lot and there is a lot of risk. So while the rarity of like that happening is so small, or it seems like it's very improbable, like you just don't know what life's going to throw at you, or like you get in a car accident and there's a lawsuit. Like that happened to me too. So it's really important, and I want to stress that to the creators listening, like even a basic just LLC, just to get things separated, just to have that, to your point, that hobby loss thing in effect, like that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's actually, pretty inexpensive as well. Business entities are formed in the state that you have your business in. So, every state's different. California, I believe, is $800 for most of their entities, and they charge that annually. Other states can be as cheap as, $100 to $300 to form an LLC. And some of them, it's valid for up to 10 years, and it's a one-time, couple $100s to form it. You can always form it yourself, or use a law firm or tax company like us to do it. Or there's also companies online that do as well. LegalZoom and things like that. I do always put a word of caution with using those, that they don't always get the documents right. And I've had a couple clients that thought they formed an LLC, but accidentally formed a partnership. And then when you file your taxes, you file the wrong form, and it can make a big mess. A lot of people think it's thousands and thousands of dollars to form a legal entity to protect themselves. And for most cases, it's not. If you want something really complicated and forming a Delaware corporation for maximum protections, it could get that complicated. But for most people, it's a couple $100s, maybe $1,000 to form an entity like that.
Yeah, no, and it's so important, because even though that might, even on the high end, $1,000 investment could be saving you thousands and thousands of dollars down the road. So it's really that insurance policy for your business. When you mentioned earlier kind of like financial counseling, what is financial counseling versus like tax prep, and how are they different?
Sure. So, I'm both a financial counselor and a financial therapist. And basically the difference between that and your kind of traditional financial planning certifications is it's more of a holistic approach. There's all sorts of degrees and licenses out there where you learn how to maximize profits and maximize investments and what tax strategy saves you the most money. And those are all great, but human beings aren't that simple. We have emotions, we have fears, we have biases. And when it comes to finances, that's one of the most stressful things that we deal with in life. Finances are one of the leading causes for stress, for depression, for marital issues, for divorce. And I always tell people that saving money or building wealth is kind of like losing weight. You could tell someone that, oh yeah, if you eat less and work out more, you're going to lose weight. And from someone that lost 80 pounds themselves, it really is, on paper that easy. But anyone that's ever tried it before and tried putting down that bag of potato chips at 10 p.m., it's not actually that easy, because there's emotions and there's reasons why, we like the food. Well, there's reasons why we like to spend money, or we have a hard time putting it in a bank account or investing it. And it can be personal traumas we've had in the past. It could be fear of losing control of our money. And a lot of times it's just the way we were raised. If you grew up in a household that never talked about finances and your parents and siblings lived paycheck from paycheck, you never learned those fundamentals and the discipline in order to grow wealth. The same way that you might not have learned how to eat healthy and work out. So doing the financial therapy and the financial counseling, I try to help clients find what's their reason for the relationship they have with their finances, and then develop a plan that uniquely helps with that relationship. Because, I could tell someone, you invest your money here and we do this tax strategy, and that's going to give you the best outcome. But it might not be the best outcome for them, because their emotions and their background and biases, that's not what's going to help them get to their goals. Maybe we have to adjust to something that on paper might not be as mathematically beneficial for them, but for them as a whole and a holistic approach is actually the best strategy for them.
I love that you have this holistic approach to what you're doing because I think that's something that there's is definitely missing. And it's like it kind of frames you as more of like a wealth or like tax and financial personal trainer in that aspect because that is it's a great analogy. Like it takes a lot of shifting your own personal paradigms and your own environmental circumstances that you've inherited and internalized to really make massive changes like this because a financial shift is a massive lifestyle change as well because everything you do goes into it. Like I know if I'm emotional, I'll go on Amazon and I'll shop. So
Right.
things are very real. I want to ask also about the difference between what you do as a law firm and or what you can do as a law firm versus just being an accounting firm because we work closely with other people who are adult and sex work friendly that are kind of accounting based, but you have this law firm aspect to you as well. So what differences or what distinguishing should we make there about what you can offer resource wise?
Yeah. So, some of the services are going to be the same that, an accounting firm or CPA firm does. We obviously do tax returns in house, bookkeeping and payroll. The biggest difference is, some of the legal work that we do for clients, beyond just forming entities. We do a lot of contracts for clients, NDAs, that they can have with their customers or vendors. Dealing with legal disputes. We do quite a bit of mediation or contract negotiations for people. But the biggest part comes down to the education and also the legal relationship to have with clients. So, I did took 4 years of school to go to law school, and that's 3 more years. And each master's degree was another 2 after that. So that's, 4 more on top. So 11 years of college and taking exams to get all the licenses. But the kind of most unique part, and I think the part that I really thoroughly enjoy, is all my clients, whether we're just doing simple taxes for them or we're doing a lot of legal work or litigation, at the end of the day, I'm their attorney and they get attorney-client privilege. And what that means is that everything that they tell me, whether it's work that they're doing that's completely legal or work they're doing that's in a gray area, or even work that they're doing in the industry that, depending on where you're located, it might not be legal in all places. They have that confidentiality and protection with me where my clients can be completely honest with me. And that's what I always tell them. I'm the person that you tell everything to, and I'll let you know what not to say out loud again. And so there's a lot of trust that is built that way. And I think that's really important because, when you have your business, it's so important to you. It's usually one of the most intimate things in your life. And you spend so much of your time building this and so much emotion into it. But when it comes to working in this industry in particular, there's so much bias and there's so much connotation that comes with it too, that a lot of people feel like they just can't be honest about, not just what they do for a living, but what they do with their money. And so by us being a law firm and having licensed attorneys here, as well as accountants and bookkeepers and other financial professionals, our clients are able to be completely upfront and honest with us. And what that allows is for us to make the best possible plans and decisions for them, for their own unique situation and business.
Yeah, I can see that because the confidentiality or the space to really feel like you can be vulnerable and really explain every detail, that has to make it better all around for the client and professional relationship because you have that layer of transparency that maybe you don't get just going to simply an accountant or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And, I always, let clients know, I represent them. I don't represent the IRS. I don't represent anything that's out of their complete best interest. As an attorney, I have a fiduciary duty to all my clients as well, that whatever recommendations I make have to be in the best interest of my client and not in the best interest of my firm. That's, something that I always put at the forefront. And I make sure everyone that I hire as well has that same mentality, that we're here to do best by our clients and everyone else is second.
So this is going to be a little bit of a tangent question, but because you're dealing with adult creators and sex workers, like when you're going through that hiring process internally, like how do you vet that the people you're bringing in don't have these inherent biases or like whorephobia or things like that. Because for adult creators, performers, sex workers, like it's very hard to find people to work with. And this has been my lived experience as well, who don't want to take advantage of you or who don't bring and project kind of their own shit onto you about what you do. Like, what does that process look like for you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely, as far as my own business goes, it's definitely one of the most difficult parts. It's not necessarily difficult finding people that are pro industry and pro, people doing the kind of work that they enjoy, but finding someone that has the qualifications they need to give financial advice or legal advice that also have that, open mindset, and are trustworthy is difficult. And so when I hire someone on at my team, I spend a lot of time getting to know them first, finding out what their viewpoints are, not just on the industry and people that work on it, but also their viewpoints on finances and, how do they treat their own financial situation. In the same way that I wouldn't want to be tutored by someone that got, a D- in a class or, personal trained by someone that, isn't in great shape. I want to make sure that everyone on my team that is helping people with their finances or taxes are very disciplined in their own life on that. But a big part of it is just making sure that when I hire someone, they're very aware of who our clientele is, and very aware of the relationships that we build with our clients. It's not just, there's some clients where, I hear from them in April, usually last minute with all their tax documents. And I might hear it from them 6 months later, but probably not again till the next tax season. But by and large, most of my clients are reaching out to us on a weekly basis or a monthly basis because we're not just doing their tax returns or we're not just forming an entity for them. We're really there to help them grow their business. Sometimes it's not even legal or tax advice. It's just business advice of, hey, should I take this affiliation? Do you think this would be good for my brand? Is this going to bite me in the ass in the future if I, do my business this way versus another way? So we get really intimately involved with our clients' businesses and build that really strong relationship with them. So make sure that my team understands that and has no judgment, no bias against the industry or people that work on it is number one on my list when I'm expanding my team.
I love that. That's so reassuring to hear. Because that's a real challenge for adult creators. And this is kind of like when we first met at XWIZ and got to chatting and know each other. Like those are the things that stand out to me is making sure we have resources and I can, with SWCEO, just also platform resources that are really geared towards us in our industry specifically. Because it's hard to sift through and filter through people and all of their beliefs, and to have a company dedicated to doing that, like heavy lifting before they even hire, is a huge bonus for creators, and just takes a lot of the stress and, off of an already scary and stressful thing. So that's huge. I want to know now, because this is something that will inspire hope with me and with all of our listeners, but like, have you really, like, what are some examples? And obviously you can't be specific at all, but examples of like, you guys taking a creator and helping them to build real financial security, like whether that's their retirement or savings or real estate investments or like just building their business. Because I think hearing real kind of stories anecdotally or like real examples kind of makes this feel doable. And like even myself, with as established a business that I have, I am not a financial or tax expert. This is like the biggest blunder of my career personally. And I never want to give advice when I haven't done the work, like kind of what you alluded to. You want to take advice from someone who's got their house in order or done the thing. This is why I kind of try to leverage experts in these areas where I'm especially weak in, because one, I could use the advice and I know a lot of the creators listening can too. But what examples or stories do you have of kind of like bringing creators to some semblance of financial security? Because I think that would be really inspiring to hear.
Yeah, sure. So, one of it is just getting people to start is the hardest part and the most important. You always hear that the greatest tool you have in wealth building is time. And the reason for that is compound interest. When you start investing as early as you can in life, it just builds on itself and keeps growing. So doing things like setting up Roth IRAs for clients or SEP IRAs to be able to put that money into. And the other part too, and kind of going back on the the timeline that a lot of content creators have in the industry, and that might be maybe with age or decline in customer base, you might not make as much money in the future as you do now. Is really focusing on passive revenue streams. One example, we have a client that does quite well in streaming services, but doesn't really produce a whole lot of income in content platforms where there's subscribers or selling videos or pictures. And, we went over all of her financial situation and where her money's coming in from. And we talked about how, she makes great money, but only when she's in front of the camera and physically working and putting all the effort. But when she's off camera, she's really not bringing in any income. And as you start to plan for retirement, one good strategy for that is to have passive sources of income. And that can come from having a strong platform of subscribers where you've already made the content and now you're just essentially getting residuals for what could be for years. It could be investment properties, buying a condo or a house, whether it's a long-term rental or an Airbnb. We've had a couple clients, so we've helped them set up LLCs to put rental properties in to protect those and have that passive income, or even putting money into stocks or mutual funds that maybe produce a dividend. So that way, if something happens for your main source of income, whether it's Chatterbait or OnlyFans or mainstream production, and something changes, you still have multiple revenue streams that you're able to not just live off of, but also build that wealth. So that's been a few of the things that we've been able to do for clients.
I love that. And this kind of brings me and is a nice segue into like this next question I have, which is recently I've been dealing with kind of my own like family personal stuff, and I've had to really understand and like come to figure out estate planning. So like, when it comes to being an adult creator, the questions that come up for me is like, well, I don't have any estate planning or like asset protection in that way. And I know like, yeah, I'm youngish now still. And I'm working towards getting my finances in order, but like, what does estate planning even mean or look like for an adult creator? Like, that's not something that people talk about or discuss.
Yeah, sure. So in its most basic form, estate planning is usually talking about a will or a trust. And the main reason for there's kind of two big purposes for doing estate planning. One is to carry out a person's wishes upon their passing or incapacitation. So whether it's passing away and making sure their money or car or house goes to their loved ones or to the charity that they're really involved with. Or it can even be something like a power of attorney or medical power of attorney, where if you end up in the hospital and can't make your own decisions because you're incapacitated, you have a document in place that either already directs doctors what to do for you or gives a loved one that you trust a power to make those decisions. And the second biggest thing it does is it puts your assets in a plan that's going to maximize not having to pay taxes on it so that the hard-earned money you've already made and built is actually going to go to the loved ones you're leaving behind or the causes that you believe in. And what a lot of people don't kind of realize with estate planning a will, and a lot of people think, oh, I'm younger, I don't have a whole lot of money yet, or maybe I don't own a house yet, I don't have any kids, I don't need a will. And, you may not have to go out and get a fancy will paid for by an attorney. But what a lot of people don't realize is by default, you actually already have one. It's whatever state you're living in, that state has a property code that already has the default of what will happen. So when you have an estate plan made, essentially what you're doing is you're saying, I don't want the government to decide what happens to me and my stuff when I pass. I want it to happen the way I design it. And if you don't have a will, it's just going to go through what's called the probate process in the state you live in. And the state's already decided what's going to happen, whether it's, all of your stuff passes on to your spouse or half of it goes to your kid and half goes to that distant cousin that you've never met, because that's how the law went down the list of blood relatives until it finds someone for your stuff to go to. So estate planning is not just important to make sure that you're planning what happens to everything you've worked so hard for once you've moved on from this life, but it can also be a really important tax planning tool as well, especially once you're talking about really higher net worth individuals. There's a lot of unique things that can be done in mixing both estate planning with tax planning.
That's really useful to know, because like this kind of brings me to my next question, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately just because of my own circumstances. But like when a creator specifically, or if a creator specifically was to pass unexpectedly, like what happens to their content, like their fan accounts or subscription, payouts from OnlyFans, or like their earnings, if they have no legal plan? Like what actually occurs in that instance to everything they've built, or to their legacy, I guess?
Yeah, so more than likely the income that's generated from their content and whatever business they have set up is going to pass on to those individuals that are decided from the probate process. So whether it's a parent, spouse, sibling, distant cousin, if they don't have an estate plan, more than likely that income would be passed on to those. But it causes a few problems. One is probate can be a long, expensive, giant pain in the butt. I have done a couple probate cases, and I'm not a huge fan of them because they're emotional, and they really drag on, and they're exhausting for the loved ones that have to deal with it. But the kind of bigger problem is if you don't have a legacy plan in place, your business essentially is going to cease to operate anymore. Especially if you're by yourself and you're the face of the business and you're the model or the creator, and you're the one in all the content. If you don't have a plan in place for someone to keep operating that while you're gone, or for it to be happening passively, your loved ones might be entitled to the income, but if there's no one that's still operating it, there's at least for not very long, there's not going to be any more income coming in from it. I have to have the same thing in place with my law firm. Even if I didn't pass, but I just became really, really ill and ended up in the hospital for a month, clients would call me and would just never hear from me. The business would stop operating. So I have legacy plans in place where if something happens to me, whether medically or worse, that I have another trusted attorney that is going to, step in and make sure all my clients are taken care of. Because that's my biggest concern with my business is if I were to pass away, all of my clients are going to be, left in the wind with no one to help them. So, on top of having an estate plan, it's a good idea to have just a plan for your business. And again, not even if you were to pass away, but, something happens. You got sick, you had family, circumstances that came up. If you have a plan in place, you can still be growing that business, or at least keep it running while you're handling things that, things happen in life that pop up, but you want to make sure that you have a plan in place to account for that when it does.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much that simple piece of advice about having just a plan in place has been so impactful and influential in my life. I remember there was, when I first got into this industry, I started from the webcam space. And when I've told this story many times now, but when I got paper checks in the mail, like they actually used to send us our payouts in paper checks. And because they did that, I had made the assumption, or I was under the assumption, they were withholding taxes because I had never been a 1099 employee before. So I didn't save for taxes, and I was super surprised with that giant tax bill at the end of the year. And I kind of had to really undo that first year in this industry because I made so much. I was very successful that first year, but it really set me up for failure the next couple of years trying to manage and navigate it. And there was this time where I was sitting at the kitchen table with all these bills and letters from the IRS, and I wouldn't open them because I just didn't want to face the situation I was in. And my mom told me, the first thing you do is you got to just make a plan, open it, face it, and start putting a plan in place. And that's how you get out of any any situation in life, whether you're not sure what to do with your business, like face the facts, look at the numbers and make a plan, or whether you're trying to unsort your tax situation. So I love that we're kind of leading off with that, because I think that's a great place to leave it. I want you, if possible, can you plug like where creators listening to this can find you, find your socials, find your website, get services from you, like plug all the things?
Yeah, sure. So, the company's Only Tax Deductions law firm. We have our website, onlytaxdeductions.com. We're also on Instagram, and on X as well. And then, for anyone that goes to any of the industry conferences or conventions, I'm at most of those throughout the year. I think I got about 10 more this year that I'm planning to go to. I'll be at XBiz in Miami and the Exotica in Chicago next month, or this month. It's already April, so I'll be in Chicago in 2 weeks, just in time for taxes too. So, and I love hearing from people in the industry. I have a policy whenever someone's a client, they don't just get my direct email. They also get my cell phone number. My clients can contact me at any time with any financial or legal problems they have. Or just anything with their business that they need help with. I really do. My favorite part of my job really is being able to help people. So that's the part that I look forward to. In any of those places, people can find me and reach out, and then they'll hear back from me quickly too.
That's awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much, Nate. This was an absolute masterclass. And I think that the creators listening to this, they're going to feel like not only do they have some kind of grasp on how they can move towards protecting their money, growing it, but also just a future that they can look forward to. Like, it's very empowering to shift from, I hope I'm doing this right, to like, I know I'm doing this right. And I'm really hopeful that that's how this episode is going to make people feel. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. And I hope it gives people some relief. I mean, the one thing I always tell people is you're not alone. Finances and taxes, it scares everyone. Very few people know what they're doing. And the first step is to just ask for help and get started.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nate. Thank you, everyone else who tuned in today. If you didn't like this episode, chances are you're going to love what's happening over on our SWCEO YouTube channel as well. We post new educational courses there every single week based on what our community is actually asking for. So if I can't teach it, like today's episode, I will bring on an expert who can. The most recent course we put out is all about how to build a loyal fan base, and you can check it out right now over on youtube.com/SWCEO. And hey, if you are feeling extra spicy, and you already know we have a praise kink over here at SWCEO, so hit that subscribe button and make our whole team blush. With all of that said, take today's insights and turn them into income, because potential means nothing without action. So it's your turn, CEO Squad. Go be bad and build a business. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.
It would be absolutely incredible if you rated this podcast 5 stars and left a little review. We want to get this podcast to as many adult creators as possible, and you taking a second to leave a couple stars and a review really helps us do that. Thanks so much.